Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Authors on Mission podcast. Today, we're going to start off with a little bit of imagery for you. Imagine you're sitting in a trailer on the Pine Ridge Reservation, watching America's most beloved parade unfold on a flickering TV screen. Children around you laugh and point at the giant balloons floating down Broadway, while you carry the weight of stories that have never been heard on that same street. What would it take for you to make those stories impossible to ignore? Welcome to the Authors on Mission podcast, where we don't just celebrate the writers who dare to tell truths, we dive headfirst into the stories that change how we see the world. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer here at Authors on Mission, and today we're joined by Douglas Robbins, an author who believes the most powerful act of love is sometimes simply bearing witness. Douglas has just released Black Cloud Rises, a novel that takes us from the Pine Ridge Reservation in the heart of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, asking us to confront the stories we tell ourselves about gratitude, celebration, and whose voices get heard in America. This isn't just another book about difficult history, it's a roadmap of how fiction can crack open truths that we've been avoiding. Douglas, welcome to Authors on Mission. Let's start with that vision that set everything in motion. How did this all come into being?
Well, thank you so much for having me on the program. I had wondered long ago, 10, 20 years ago, well, what do Native Americans do on Thanksgiving? I had always been interested in Native American studies and indigenous people and people connected to the land and to the earth, to animals who revere that. But it set me on a course of learning. A lot of Native Americans do not study or believe in Thanksgiving. They have something called that started about 50 years ago called the Day of Mourning, because it's actually a reminder. Thanksgiving is often a reminder of the genocide and the hardships. So it's been a labor of love. It's been a long time and a lot of research, and I hope I've done credit.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a very important feat that you've undertaken here. It's something that a lot of people, I feel like in this day and age, we do know a lot about it. We know that, the foundation of Thanksgiving doesn't quite come from the most pleasant circumstances, but it's great to know that we're shining more and more light on this. And I'm sure the journey to creating this was a little bit of a roller coaster. I mean, in fact, did you describe yourself as somebody who seeks deeper truths that are often hidden in plain sight or swept under society's dirty rug?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, was there a certain catalyst that drove you to, want to look beneath the surface and learn a little bit more about it?
It's true with all things. Personally, if we hide things, we don't move forward, right? We don't heal if we try to hide some truth or something that we've done or has been done to us. It affects who we are, it affects our personalities, it affects how we treat others, it affects the trajectory of our lives. And so when you have something so glaring, such as the treatment of Native Americans back then, when there were battles going on, to fast forward to the reservation system and systemic issues, it's so glaring that it needs to be addressed, because it's a wound, it's a black eye, not just for them, but for America as a whole, because you can't keep talking about yourself in these honorable ways, look how great we are, when a lot of Native Americans are like living in a third world nation. And so you have such a disconnection, and that's kind of what was the impetus of the story. Was Black Cloud is sitting with his niece and nephew. The kids are having a great old time, and he never liked the parade, but he didn't understand why, other than the obvious. But it was that deeper disconnection of sort of being pushed aside or unacknowledged, and one's hardships unacknowledged. There's a lot of people in America right now trying to whitewash history or smooth it over. They don't want their kids knowing that slavery existed. And this is a real problem, right? Because you don't move forward by burying. And I would ask those people who are trying now, what is it within them that they're so afraid of? Kids are very strong, they're very resilient, And the truth be told, like, it makes them more well-rounded when they have information, right? If you thought none of this ever existed, well, you'd be going into adulthood with a very different perspective.
Right, exactly. And I mean, growing up, elementary school, middle school, we were exposed to this sort of thing. So it's a shame to know that people are trying to hide that truth nowadays. But it's also good to know that there's people like you who are bringing more truth into the world too, kind of trying to balance it out. It's very silly that somebody would try to do that because you're right, we just gonna end up repeating the same mistakes if we don't shine a light on it.
Well, they don't ever see it as that. They just see it as, we're tired of this information. It wasn't me. I didn't have slaves. I didn't do this to Native Americans. And that's fine. Maybe you did. Maybe your ancestors did. But again, it's very important to understand history. And when I was a kid, I'm a little older than you are. Christopher Columbus was almost a saint. I mean, he was revered. Oh, Columbus Day, Columbus Day. And none of it was, oh, he spread smallpox that killed millions of people. Stories, it's often based in more of a nationalistic point of view of we came from Europe and we're this and that, and everybody's happy. It's like, well, there's a lie buried within all that, or many lies.
Understood, right. Well, the most important thing about this, though, is that it is being revealed and the truth is coming to light in your book, which, to everybody listening today, it is currently June 25th, which is the anniversary of the Battle of Little Bighorn, and coincidentally, the release of Black Cloud
Yes,
Rising.
yes.
So, very exciting stuff. I feel super honored to be here as, it is
Yeah,
release day. So I'm wondering, today's day, of course, did have some significance to your choice in releasing.
yeah.
If you could speak a little bit more on that, how it relates to the themes in your book.
So Little Bighorn was a very famous battle. That's where Custer was killed, the 7th Cavalry. Again, hubris. So the 7th Cavalry had gone into a Cheyenne village a few years earlier, even though they were on reservation property at Fort whatever. I don't remember the name, but so they had even a white flag flying, and they were butchered and killed. Even though they were doing everything right, trying to be compliant, etc., and they were butchered and killed by the 7th Cavalry. So fast forward, Little Bighorn involves the Sioux, the Cheyenne, and the Arapaho. They were all allies and friends. And so it was a bloody couple of days, and this group beat the 7th Cavalry. Now, subsequently, Custer and his group did not bring Gatling guns. They left them. Those are the sort of first machine guns, those cranking machine guns. So it would have been probably a very different result. But nevertheless, that's why I released it on this day. This was probably one of the last, if not the last, victories of Native Americans, and before really the reservation system kicked in full time, and then you had Wounded Knee just 14 years later, and that was the last before the backs were broken of Native tribes, and they were all subjugated basically.
Right. Yeah. Well, very good that you've done the research. You know exactly, what this battle meant to the time and to the whole culture in general. So, very profound that you waited until this particular day to do it. I think that's a great way of honoring the memory too.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to, look a little bit through the book and learn a little bit more about it. I know that it does begin with a whole scene where we have Black Cloud watching his niece and his nephew's joy. I'm wondering, of course, to clarify, it's their joy at the Macy's parade, while of course there's generational grief that's just so powerful. So I'm wondering, when you were writing this book, how did you approach its emotional complexity without making it too overwhelming? I mean, you do a great way of balancing it all. So I'm
Thank you. Yeah, when you're dealing with such a serious subject, and grief and pain and suffering, poverty, alcoholism, like if you're simply writing it that way, so it would be too heavy, right? It's too heavy-handed, and that's not their truth. That's not their everyday truth. There's humor, and there's friendship, and there's family. And so I realize when you have such a serious subject, or the undercurrent is serious, right? Their day-to-day isn't this isn't just suffering, sitting around suffering. They're living, they're interacting, they're loving. But that undercurrent is serious. And so I realized like there needs to be levity as well to balance it. And recently I've actually read, there's a Vine Deloria, who was a writer, a Native American writer. He said, so many people just think they're just these stoic people with arms crossed and all
Right.
that, when in fact they're very funny. And he even had a chapter in his book called Native American Humor or Indian Humor. This was before they used the term Native American, but so I was so relieved to see that because, often when we're struggling or in pain, we make light of it with humor, right? There's playfulness, and there's even some lines early in the book where he goes to visit his mother, who's sick in the trailer next door and dying, and he makes some jokes, and he said, "No time." She says, "No time for jokes. Jokes hide our pain." And so that's kind of like, a contrast, right, of the depth of seriousness and kind of the levity and profundity of just friendship and love and laughter, because that's ultimately what we're all seeking.
Yeah, definitely. That is what we're all seeking. And it's great that you were able to show that in the book. It not only brings the whole culture to a point where we could all understand and relate to, but shines light on what it actually is like and bringing that joy and humor into it too. It's very
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, I mean, if not, I'm doing a disservice because, again, everyone isn't just sitting around suffering. They're people living lives, loving, trying to take care of the kids as best they can.
Definitely. And you were able to do this in a way that's also historically accurate. In the beginning of this chat today, you also mentioned the amount of research that did go into this. So, what
Yes.
was the research process like? I think that's something that a lot of authors can benefit from learning. It's a extensive, time-consuming thing, but has to be done correctly. So, what was your process for?
Yeah, often ideas lead to more research, and more research leads to more research. And so many things I didn't know. I studied, but you're talking about vast history of hundreds of years and hundreds of different tribes. And so there's no one size fits all. So yeah, I mean, anytime there was a story or an idea I needed to pursue would often lead me to some government program or something that was designed often to steal the land. There was something called the Indian Relocation Act in the 50s, but really it was also called by many the Indian Termination Act because it was ultimately designed to destroy the reservation system in order to take back all that land and absorb Native Americans into cities, basically blend them in, destroy their cultures and take back that land that is the reservations. And it was a terrible failure and ended in, poverty for a lot of people that were promised jobs. There was also a lot of propaganda films on, oh, you could be a great engineer, you could be a auto mechanic, you could be this and that. Problem was underfunded, understaffed, and was never going to succeed.
Right, understood. So it's kind of set up for failure, I guess you could say.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's
And I
incredible.
don't think they understood the volume of people interested again to better themselves, because on the reservation there are often a lot of jobs. There are not a lot of jobs because there's not a lot of industry.
Unfortunate the way that all works out, but also great that they were able to uncover that in the research process and kind of bring it to light in a new way. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Did
So
a
so
great job.
often one thing leads to another,
Mhm.
and you can certainly go down the rabbit hole because there's so much information, so many things that did take place, and then you have a lot of inept politicians who don't really understand the scope of what's happening.
Yeah, and that's a whole other rabbit hole right there too.
Yeah, for sure. Just
But
like now, yes.
mhm. But that being said, I mean, you did mention that your hopes and goals for Black Cloud Rises is to help people heal and to move forward with this also. I'm wondering, was the process of writing healing for you as well in any way?
Writing, this is my seventh book, and writing is often cathartic, is often about me when I'm not even aware that it's about me. My last book, Baseball Dreams and Bikers, was about three stories and they're all about the dreams inside of us that sometimes we lose. Sometimes we don't know we're falling off the path of our dreams. And I didn't realize the book was really about me. And I think regarding Black Cloud Rises, you know, part of the premise or the theme is to be seen, right? We want to be seen as individuals, as our culture, and not suppressed. And often, as children, we're suppressed, we're not seen. And I think that's part of who I was as a kid, and I brought that into my adulthood. And so that's probably a little bit of what drives some of the themes behind the story arcs.
Understood, right. And I can see that it's something that you kind of adapt as you go along the writing process, basically from what you've been learning from the research, and just like I can see how it alters the different themes that you've been putting through too. So
Yeah,
definitely.
writing is a curious thing. You start in one place and you end up in somewhere else, and you don't know what the journey is, but you are certainly growing along the way.
Definitely. And your characters too do the same thing and kind of grow along the way. I know that they consistently undergo, personal growth, and navigating life's complexities, their challenges. So I think that's a whole nother thing that we should chat about today is how you do develop these characters that are living in such difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
Certain plotting method.
Yeah, so each character, so the main characters were in their 50s. So which means they all have stories, they all have experiences, and that forms who they are. So writing for me in this regard, developing characters, is sort of like getting to know someone, right? When you first meet someone, you're not like, tell me everything, all your darkest secrets, tell me all your hopes and dreams, right? You don't ask that. It's kind of the first time you meet them is a little more superficial. And then as you get to know or maybe become good friends, you learn about this person's challenges, divorces, kids who don't talk to them anymore, all these kind of things, the dog that died, their loves, their fears, their personality traits. So that to me is simply you start writing, and when you write say a rough draft or a draft or a first draft, you're just kind of writing this sort of more skimming of the surface of the story of the characters. And then over time, they reveal themselves to you. You see this one guy a little bit more, or why the sister reacts in such a way, because you understand their motives. You start seeing them as three-dimensional beings. When you're initially writing them, you don't. And I often, just one more piece of this is people say about writer's block. I don't really know what writer's block is. I don't really understand what writer's block is. And what I mean is that doesn't mean every day I have everything to say. It just all comes out of me. Some days I don't have anything, and I'm trying to learn though. And sometimes you have to let something sit for a couple of days so you can develop and go, oh, that's why this person does whatever. It's getting to know them more. You can't force getting to know someone. So you have to let it germinate and develop organically. And that's why I don't understand writer's block. You're just forcing something that's not there yet. You have to let it develop.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I like that method a lot. You have to think about each character's individual backstories and figure out the most organic way to tell their story through that. And, regarding writer's block, like you said, I get that. Sometimes you just need to step aside and think about it for a bit and let the inspiration come to you in the best way. You're right. You can't force it. You can't force it or else it's just not going to come out right.
Like with anything, sometimes we have big decisions to make, and you can't force it, or it doesn't turn out well. You have to say, all right, let me go do something else for a few hours. Let me go take a walk.
Right.
Kind of like distract the mind, focus on something else, and that allows really the subconscious to interact with the character and go, okay, this is the next piece of that.
Exactly. No, I like that a lot. Some good methods, and I think a lot of authors today who are also struggling with their own character development could learn from that.
Yeah, and they have to be unique because they can't all sound like the writer. They have to be unique to themselves.
Yeah, how do you do that? I mean, like, you might have one character who's in their 50s and talks a certain way, or another character who's a child, right? How do you distinguish between each of those? I know, personally how to, but for anybody who might have, struggles, what would you say?
Again, you have to let them
Yeah.
develop. They all have
Let them develop.
individual quirks and personality traits. This guy might be a big goofball. This other one is really serious. He's small and sinewy. The other one's a little heavier set. Like, he's got, fluffy hair. The other guy is balding. Like, what are the traits that define them? So Black Cloud's wife had passed on. His daughter moved away, but he's still kind of filled with love and reverie and playfulness because of the kids, his sister's kids. But there's another character, Samuel, who lives alone basically, and he just has his horse and his pigs or whatever. So, like very different points of view. So this is why you have to keep painting the picture. Who are these people? What do they want? Where did they come from? Where are they struggling and suffering? And that makes us all three-dimensional, but you can't just gloss over character development. It's so imperative because this is what makes them individuals.
Right, exactly. And one thing I just thought of is you do host your own podcast too. So I'm wondering, by all these different guests coming on your shows, I'm sure that's another way that you're inspired for characters in your books too. You're meeting new people all the time. I'm wondering if that plays a part in it too.
I don't know if that plays in a part. I think it plays in a part as far as me pursuing the ideas of bringing things forward that are often not brought forward. Um, so I just had a woman on my show about plastics and microplastics and how it's affecting, it's in every drink. You go to Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks, you get one of those cups, and they tell you it's cardboard. It looks like cardboard. Well, it's not cardboard on the inside. It's plastic on the inside.
Hmm.
And you put hot liquid into that. Well, you're now triggering microplastics into your drink, thousands, if not millions, of microplastic bits. And so, to me, all this stuff reveals the bigger picture of who we are and what do we really want as human beings. And it always comes back to humanity to me, and not society as far as buying stuff, external stuff, jeans that make me look whatever cool. We're always seeking a deeper connection, a deeper meaning, love, friendship, laughter. When you're in that state, you're not saying, oh, I also need jeans. No, you don't. And the jeans are fleeting, right? I bought jeans, they feel nice, they look whatever, but they don't change anything. They don't change your life. Those deep, meaningful connections, fulfilling experiences, writing for me, that's what, has a deeper meaning.
Right. That's what it's all about, right? Finding that deeper meaning that speaks to you and, exactly what makes you tick, I guess you could say. And that's great
Yeah.
to be able to do that. Um,
Yeah.
would you say in any way that the novel writing and the podcast hosting complement each other? Perhaps they do feed in each other creatively in another way?
Um,
Like for me,
they
for
they
example,
are
I do get some ideas when I'm talking to somebody. It kind of feeds into one or the other.
well, it's funny because it's really the podcast is, writing is a piece of me, whereas the podcast I can say anything I like, whereas writing is more of a finite system and very long term, takes a long time to write a book. Whereas the podcast, we're doing one right now. You can knock one out quickly, and you could do another one next week in a totally different direction. So I feel like the podcast, in some ways, is more comprehensive, whereas books are more, specific. So, but they definitely complement each other, and I'm really grateful to get to do both.
Right, I do understand that completely, and I feel the same way. Somebody who ghostwrites and edits, it's really fun to talk to people, and then also get into your own little cocoon and write on your own too. So it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So all this being said, we talked a bunch about this particular book, but you do have a lot of others out there. So if the audience today is inspired by what you've been talking about, how can they get in touch and not only learn more about Black Cloud Rises, but your other books as well?
Yeah, I mean, they can find the podcast is called The Douglas Robbins Show. My website is douglasrobbinsauthor.com. And if you sign up with your email, you get a free story. But you can find my podcast there. You can find other books there. You can find, Black Cloud Rises on Amazon, Nook, Kobo, wherever you might be located, Google. But yeah, I'd love to connect with folks. And if people have any comments, I'd love to hear what they have to say.
Oh, perfect. We're going to put the links to that in the description box of this podcast today. So everybody, if you are inspired, you want to learn a little bit more, you want to get connected, that's the perfect way to do so. Just hit the description box, click on the links, and get in touch. So Douglas, it really has been wonderful having you on today. I feel so honored to be chatting with you on the release date of the book. Do you have any certain celebrations now that, it's the big release day? Anything on the agenda?
Well, coming on here and just, I've been doing promo sites and all that, because you have to do all that. Writing is half the battle and the marketing is the other half. So they're just doing that and sending out email blasts and social media blasts and all that kind of fun stuff. But, it's a different beast. It takes a different mindset now to switch to marketing from the writing. But, you often think it's a big celebration when you finish a book, and it is, but initially it's just relief and exhaustion. And then the celebration, takes place after that. But very excited to be at this point with the book.
I like that you just approached that with such a realistic response there. My initial reaction is like, oh, maybe he'll crack open a bottle of champagne, but I can see how you have to put the work in first. And to everybody listening today, we're all looking forward to that day that the book hits the shelves, but you do need to think about the realism behind it. You need to continuously feed life into your books to ensure that people, read them and it reaches other people. So important that you do that first. Work first, then play.
Well, you know what? If I may, one more thing, Danielle. When I had written a book called The Reluctant Human about choices and regrets, and then getting back to dreams and being on one's kind of journey. But when I first wrote, I was living in New York City, and you get that sense that, are you going to do this? You accomplish this, and the sky is going to open for you, and the doves are going to be released, and that's just not what happens. And it's heartbreaking that it doesn't happen like that. I've done my part. I wrote this book. The sky should open, and accolades and success, follow and all that. But that's just not how it works. And that's why you have to put in the effort to write the book, and then you have to put in the effort to get the book out there, because if people don't know it's there, it's not going to succeed. Just the harsh reality of it.
I like that. You need to shine a light on those harsh realities. I guess that's one thing you're good at doing, is bringing to light things that other people like to kind of forget about or sweep under the rug, but you need to, be real about it. So yeah.
I mean, you need a team. We don't do it all alone. Once again, that humanity is, we need each other.
Understood. Well, I do appreciate all these tips. I think that you've offered a lot of valuable insights to our listeners today. So thank you so much for coming on. It's really been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure as well. Thank you much.
Of course. And to all of our listeners, know that Black Cloud Rises is available now. I have a feeling it's going to stay with readers long after they close the final page. So be sure to check it out, everybody. And also be sure to check out the Douglas Robbins Show podcast. And even more so, just know that this episode is exactly why we do what we do. Stories have power. They can make the invisible visible, give voice to the voiceless, and heal wounds that we didn't even know were bleeding. So Douglas Robbins here today has given us a masterclass in that.
Thank you, Danielle. Appreciate it.
Of course. And just remember, I want to leave you with this. Keep writing, keep truth-telling, and keep pushing boundaries. The world needs to know the stories that only you can tell. So until next time, this is Authors on Mission podcast. Have a great day, everybody.
This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.